Welcome to the Healthy Christian Leader. I'm Dwight Habermehl. Come join me in the living room for some honest conversations. I'll be talking to guests about their journey with Christ through the joys, the challenges, and the messiness of leadership. There's always something to learn from someone's story, so let's get started. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Healthy Christian Leader. I'm Dwight Habermehl, and I have our guest today, Peter Lohnes. And Peter, it is great to have you here. You're from Fredericton, New Brunswick, and come all the way over to join us in the studio. I'm so glad you did. I know you were holidaying in Nova Scotia for a little while.
And I grew up in Halifax too, so it's nice to get back every now and then.
Well, it's nice to have you here. Peter, tell us a little bit about your journey. You're a seasoned pastoral leader now. You're
37 years.
37 years in ministry. You must have been an awful young pup when you went into pastoral ministry.
I went straight from high school to my BA to my MDiv. Back in the days when the people did that. Now it's a lot longer.
It's a compliment because you look very young for so many years of experience. So anyway, we are here today, and our topic that we're going to be talking about is leading with grace during change and uncertainty. And for those who've just joined, there was an awesome podcast about transitions in ministry that we did just earlier. And if you haven't heard that, I suggest you go look it up online and go listen to it. Peter had so much good content there. But Peter, we want to talk about leading with grace during changes and uncertainty. COVID brought a lot of change and uncertainty, didn't it? You were pastoring during that period.
I was.
You know, I know that's a segue question, but I bet, because I know I was involved in church leadership in our own church, you know, it brought a lot of uncertainty for people.
Oh, the change was extraordinary. When it first started, I was actually leading a mission team in Dominican, and we got home on Sunday. The next day, all the schools in New Brunswick were closed, and so forth. So we just got in before that. We were supposed to have our annual meeting the next Sunday afternoon, and by Wednesday we decided, well, we won't do the potluck or whatever. We'll just have the meeting. By Thursday, maybe we'll skip the meeting. We'll just have worship service. By Friday, we weren't even having church. We had to go straight online from then. It was just so much change so quickly.
And we could never have guessed that it would be such a prolonged experience.
Yeah.
You know, because it wasn't just a couple of months. It ended up being a couple of years.
Yeah, that's right.
And the impacts were profound. How do you maintain spiritual confidence when change brings confusion or resistance? You know, that was a time of confusion. There were periods resistance from some and others. But COVID is it's behind us now, but it's certainly not the only experience where the changes happen in the life of leadership and there's problems.
At Grace right now, we're going through a revisioning process about who we want to be in the next 5 years and so forth. And several months ago, just doing my own personal devotions and I was reading through Matthew 28. And Matthew 28 is a Great Commission, and Jesus sending out the 12, it's after the resurrection, stuff like that. Matthew 28, I'm going to say verse 13, it just struck me. It says, as Jesus brings his disciples together, to meet him on the mount, and he's going to give them a great commission. It says they worshipped, but some doubted. And I was just struck by that moment of, here are these guys who have been with Jesus through all his ministry. They saw the healings. They heard the teaching. They knew him intimately and all those things. They'd seen the power, the witnesses to the resurrection. And yet some doubted. And so forth. And it just reminded me, and Jesus is entrusting the Great Commission to these guys, and so forth. And it just, it reminded me, affirmed me that the ministry and everything, it's all up to God. Mm-hmm. And so we leave it in his hands. And I might feel frail. I might not have even confidence in myself type idea, but I can have confidence in God, and God uses that, and God's faithful to that. And so for me, I think in times of transition, how do I maintain spiritual confidence? I remember that God's the one who's ultimately got it for me, and he can use even people who might have a few doubts, questions along the way.
Well, it's so interesting you would bring that up, because it brings up the theme of spiritual rest, which is a powerful position. It really is a powerful position. It comes, if you look through Hebrews, I think you can extract the themes and the ideas of faith coupled with righteousness or right alignment with God, and establishing this sense of spiritual rest within yourself. And, interestingly, it produces a non-anxious presence, of which most leadership books talk about how important that is.
It is. It's extremely important. I think through COVID in particular, just not being anxious in the midst of it all, being able to give words of hope and not be stressed out during those times, I think was so important just to help the church navigate the constant changes that were going on.
What leadership postures foster peace during seasons of organizational uncertainty?
It's my thought, but it was a phrase my wife gave me actually as I was thinking about this. And we talked about confident compassion. And the confidence is in God, and the confidence is, God's been at this a lot longer than I have. I mean, 37 years, but 6,000 years or more, I guess, that God's been working at building his church and so forth. And so you have a confidence in God, and you have a trust that God knows what he's doing, and that the ministry is his ministry to do as he wants. But you also need to have compassion, and God is a God of compassion, and as pastoral leaders, be able to show compassion to our people. And people are going through uncertain times, that it's stressful, anxious, when change is coming and not everybody embraces change and stuff like that, to be able to meet people with compassion and empathy, and to understand it's hard for them, be able to share how it might even be hard for you, so that you can let them know that it's okay to be stressed or to be sad about what might be changing and stuff like that. So have confidence, have compassion. And the other thing I think is just to be humble during those times.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the ultimate time of shepherding, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And, you think about the shepherd's role as a biblical picture. God, Jesus chose to use the shepherd as an example, which would have been a very profound example, of course, in the cultural time then. But a shepherd not only leads to greener pastures, which is provision, he not only leads to water, which is refreshment, but the shepherd also calms the sheep, and keeps them together and processing.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a really major challenge during transitional and difficult times.
Yeah. I think about Jesus with Peter after Peter's denial. And you remember in the Gospel of John, Jesus goes looking for that lost Peter. He's gone back to fishing, type of idea, because he wants to go back to the way it was and not necessarily go forward and stuff like that. And Jesus seeks him out, makes sure he understands that he still has a role for him in that extending forgiveness.
That's so really interesting, Peter. Because in the picture of Peter with Christ in that time, that's often what we do. We get into some tough times. We'll often want to regress to something that we really know.
Yeah.
Something that's really solid in our past. And I know for Kristen and I, when we were first called out to Atlantic Canada 30 years ago, when we met some opposition in those first years of being able to provide, basically, for our needs initially. that first thing that came to mind was running back to what we know. Well, my wife actually had a lot more faith. It was me that wanted to run.
Our wives often have more faith than us. It's the secret of pastoral households and so forth. But as you talk about, Peter was going back to fishing, and Jesus said, "No, you're going to be my shepherd. Feed my sheep."
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
How can pastors help congregations see change as part of God's movement? Because it is.
It is. Yeah, change is a constant. And when we talk about God who is unchanging and faithful and steadfast through all, and yet the Bible also says his mercies are new every morning. And so change is a constant, and things have always been changing, and God's always found new ways to do things and stuff like that.
But people in churches don't like change.
But they don't. So oftentimes when we're doing, like at Grace, in the last 20 years or so, even before I came, part of what drew me to Grace was that it was very intercultural. It was something that they kind of stumbled into, where Chinese and Korean and Filipino families started showing up at church. And it was just like God was bringing them, and it wasn't anything the church had set out to do. And so as we sought to become more intentional, I just reminded them about how God had used them in the past. So Grace is actually, it's not named after the grace of God. It's named after a lady by the name of Grace Matheson, who was a missionary in India for 50 years. And we used to be a host church for missionaries and so forth. And so I could say to them, we've always been a mission-focused congregation. And we've always been, sending people around the world to share the gospel. And now the world's coming to us. And so it's a change, but it's part of the way God's always used us. In a sense, look for ways how God has kind of put in the DNA of the church what he's calling us to now. And so that the change, it might be new for us, but I think it's always been part of God's plan. And it's just where he's leading us and so forth.
And we're in a time of rapid change. The culture is changing really quickly. Technology, AI is coming on like a freight train. It's it seems like it was just made available to the general public yesterday, and every software imaginable has got an AI attachment on it now. And they talk about job losses being a major part, because it accomplishes work in lightning speed that you'd have to pay for. And we're in an age of change.
We are. And I'm as nervous about AI as probably everybody or a lot of people are, and so forth. And it's not, it has been part of my experience. But it's something I gotta figure out where it fits.
And shepherding people's lives through change as they may come, or as it may come. Our world is changing. The way we do trade, the way we communicate, and for older people even, it's even that much harder. I find young people are very adaptive to the technology side, but uncertain about the emotional element of change.
Oh yeah.
What spiritual disciplines ground you in times of upheaval?
I think what I've found, especially over the last 20 years, is the spiritual disciplines need to be there before the upheaval.
That's such a good word. It's so true.
Yeah. For me...
It's like trying to work out after they drop a 500-pound weight on you.
Yeah, well, that's it. During the times of upheaval, it's hard. You're so focused on whatever the thing, it's hard to put new disciplines and things that haven't been there into your life. And it's you're floundering. And so for me, working out a series of spiritual disciplines. I went through the Arrow leadership programs. One of the things Carson shared about was spiritual retreats or periods of solitude. And so I started doing that, working a rhythm of 3 times a year that I would just take 2 to 4 or 5 days of solitude. And those have really fed my soul. And it's been very interesting to me how I schedule them way ahead of time, schedule them, throughout the year, way ahead of time. And sometimes there have been significant moments of upheaval that have come just around those that God had put that in my schedule. And so I was able to process and work through those things. And some of my most, I think, significant moments in ministry or personal growth, walk with God, have come during those moments of retreat. So that has been really good for me. And the other thing has been Lectio Divina, just learning how to pray the scriptures and cry out to God from my situation through whatever I'm reading in that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you'd share that because contemplative prayer has also been a very powerful thing for me personally, just to be able to reflect as I'm praying. And there's some great things, but the key principle is be prepared before.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, this is something you don't know when change is coming, when transition or difficulty is coming.
Nobody knew when COVID was going to start.
Yeah.
And it's change and tragedies, and you never know when they might happen. And so the better part is just to be prepared, be spiritually prepared, or be spiritually healthy ahead of time.
Peter, what about the team? How do you support a team or a staff facing collective transition? That's a challenging one.
It is. I think probably the most important thing is just to listen and to be there for your team, to check in, ask them how they're doing and what's going on in their own lives around this kind of thing, so that you can, in a sense, pastor your staff during those times and so forth. And the other thing that's important is just help them or let them be a part of the planning, the process, whatever it is, the response, be part of, so that they know what's going on. They don't feel blindsided. They don't feel like you're trying to keep things from them and stuff like that. But they also feel like they're contributing towards whatever the resolution is going to be, depending on what the crisis is.
Really what you're talking about is creating ownership of directional change. And, people own what they discover. If you just hand them a bunch of instructions and say, do this, they don't own that the same way. I mean, everything's hinged on loyalty to you, where if you can lead them in a place of discovery and minister to the team and work with the team, they get to own it, and they all pull on the rope together.
Yeah, it's not, as pastoral leader, I've tried never to be, this is the way I'm going to do it. It's how are we going to do this?
Right.
And that we're in this together.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I know here most of the people that watch this program know that I'm a design build contractor with a Kingdom Call, and meet with ministry leaders, but also lead staff of 40 or 50 people building homes all across our city. I see that in our own team. You really, if you can, people understand that challenges come. They really do.
Oh, yeah.
They understand that. That's a basic fact of life. And I think when you allow them to see, okay, this is what we're walking into, and I just want to have a discussion about it. This is what we're dealing with, and then walk them through and let them be part of the solutions and the discovery. It's a game changer. But staff can have different reactions to everything. Like I know more recently here in our own company, I had started introducing AI as a tool simply because our competition is already picking up on it. And certain practices go so much faster when it's applied. And so the immediate response is fear or concern that there could be job loss. And, we talked about that reality. We talked about, these changes are coming. These are some of the opportunities that it will open up, but these are some of the concerns that it could potentially create. And how do we work together as a team? We want it to be beneficial to everyone, and we know that our competition's going to be bringing it in. And we want to stay on the competitive edge. And, it's interesting, by the time we had our conversations through initially, everybody was very nervous when we introduced the theme. Everybody's so excited now because we recognize that it doesn't need to mean departure of team. It can mean that we can actually handle more effectively. And we started putting strategies together to be able to process more. So in that simple example, the team actually worked together to look at the problem, look at the situation, look at the solutions, and then gain ownership. And I be honest with you, when I looked at the subject alone on my own, it's a little overwhelming. And the team actually came around and supported a new strategy and a whole new business concept forward, which took a burden off of me, which was amazing.
Good.
What are common leadership mistakes during change, and how can we avoid them?
One is not listening.
Yeah.
I think is one of the big ones. Like, we come up with our own strategies before we've even really fully understood what the challenge might be and so forth. So just not listening either to our staff or to our congregation about what's going on. The other, I think sometimes it's moving too fast. Like, we plow ahead without having the preparation work done or without fully understanding the situation. And the other is moving too slow, type of idea, where you talk about it for a long period of time, and you have this idea and that idea, but at some point you have to make a decision to move ahead and so forth. And so you can be too slow. There's probably the biggest ones, I think, that I've found anyway in my experience of.
So what happens when you move too slow?
Sometimes when you move too slow, you miss the opportunity, or people get discouraged and just give up with it because they don't. If you're going too slow, then they feel like it's never going to change, never going to be resolved, or whatever it might be, type of idea.
When we're talking about times of change and uncertainty and leading with grace in those times, one point that Dr. Danny Smith down there in the valley in Middleton Baptist, he shared one time. He said, when there's a little fire that starts somewhere, I like to attend to it before it becomes a big fire, because I've learned that it's easier to put a little fire out than a big fire.
Yeah.
And that would almost be one of those times where you literally, hiding from problems is not a solution as a leader.
That's right.
It really is. Sometimes I've found in my own journey, especially, Peter, when I'm exhausted, and I'm sure you're in had that same experience where I just want to retreat from this. And maybe it'll go away. If I stick my head in the sand over here, maybe this will go away. But it never does.
But in a senior leadership position, and I know you as leader of company and stuff like that, I can't be the one who solves every problem. I have to rely on my staff. I have to trust them.
That's right.
To be able to do those kinds of things, because then I would be exhausted all the time and never have energy to do stuff. And so when you're in a larger church or multi-staff situations, you have to learn how to trust your staff to resolve some of these things and not always step in.
100%.
Yeah.
But there are times when you do.
But yes, that's right. There are times when you do, and you have to be very discerning.
Peter, we've got just a couple minutes left. What advice would you have to a leader right now who's leading through change or difficulty? And the chances of someone in a tough spot right now that's listening to the program is quite likely. Because Jesus did say, in this world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I've overcome the world.
Yeah, I think on top of all the things that we've talked about, just make sure you pray and you talk with God. and you work your way through it and stuff. I was thinking about, earlier this week, I was thinking about Acts chapter 15, where the church was going through that dramatic change of trying to figure out what to do with all these new Gentiles that were coming into this Jewish church. And they gathered together and they listened to the stories of everybody. But when the end of it all is, having listened to both sides, they said it seemed good to us and to the Spirit. And so listening for the Spirit in your prayer life, and just making sure that you keep connected with God as you go through this.
Yeah, no, that's such a good word, because, in the natural, our natural man wants to, when there's a problem or there's a big shift, we want to get control. And to get control, we have to make a plan. Assess all the situation, make a plan, and then immediately go to execution. Where a kingdom path is really, you hit a challenge or a problem, and you come to a place of surrender in the Lord's presence. And from surrender comes revelation.
That's right. Yeah, I think in prayer, listening to God as well as, expressing yourself to God, there's wisdom. The Spirit speaks. God still speaks into people's lives and leads us into things and into His direction and so forth.
And there's nothing like a plan that comes from revelation.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it'll be a cakewalk necessarily,
No.
but you have a divine alignment there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's so good. Peter Lohnes, folks, and it's been good to have you part of this conversation on leading with grace during change and uncertainty. And we'll see you next time on The Healthy Christian Leader. Well, thanks for joining this conversation. I trust that you were encouraged and challenged by the stories and experiences that were shared today. Would you join us next week? You can find new episodes weekly in video form on the Aaron Ministries YouTube page and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leadership. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more information and resources, and on how you can donate to our ministry and potentially start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Until we meet again, may you experience the Lord's blessing, grace, and peace. I'll see you next week.